Welcome back to Chess for Closers. I'm Dave Sherman. I'm going to do an Emory Tate game today. We've done a couple in the past, and I want to do more in the future. But I want to do different games than the Tate games that you've seen other people do. Power chess and Agdamator. I think the chess master versus chess amateur games have more instructional value. And so I have a game here that Emory played in the 1989 Maryland Open against a fellow named Jeff Crook, who I've also played. He's from West Virginia. This is a long time ago. This is 89. Okay. Jeff was not a master. I'm not sure if he's an expert or not, but he's no chump. And so let's see how Emory Tate dismantled this non-master. And I think this is something. The game will speak for itself to a certain extent. Okay, so here's Jeff. Jeff had the white pieces, and he played f4. I would think that's sort of a terrible move. Maybe Bent Larson disagreed. Who are you going to believe? Knight f3, knight c6, g3. Okay, now if you're expecting bishop to g4 here, or maybe g6, knight f6, I'm sorry, you must not have seen very many Emory Tate games. h5, of course. Jeff didn't blink. Emory played h4. Now, he is not going to play here and then exchange rooks. The significance of which would be no one castles kingside and the game continues. That's not what Emory had in mind. And we'll see what he had in mind in a minute. Okay, Jeff played knight c3. And of course, h3. And only move here is bishop back to f1. Okay, so what has Emory accomplished here? Well, he's gained a lot of space. That's the first thing. White isn't ready to castle. Of course, black isn't either with his pawn on h3. But there's also something else. Black's h-pawn moves in conjunction with the g3 and the f4 pawn moves of white have weakened white squares on the king side, and maybe e4 also. Well, certainly f4 weakens e4 square. So let's see what Emory does about that. Bishop back to f1. Okay, knight f6. d4. Bishop f5. Any of these moves, other than the h-pawn moves, any of these moves you wouldn't consider? They look pretty standard to me. Bishop f5, e3. What do you know? e6. Bishop to d3, and now bishop to b4. For those of you who might worry about your doubled f-pawns, Jeff can take and Emory would take back on f5 with the e-pawn. Double pawns, there are double pawns and there are double pawns. This would not be a problem for black. First of all, it opens up the e line, which has already been weakened by the two pawn moves here. But also light squares that were already weak, without a white squared bishop, they're even going to be weaker. And of course, I shouldn't have to point out here the connection between bishop to b4, bishop f5, knight on f6, the pawn on d5. They all have one square in common, and that's e4. Bishop to b4. But again, these are not fantastic Emory Tate moves that only geniuses can find. These are moves that all of us would make. So now this is a move that I made, and usually moves like this aren't good. And the point is this: when black plays bishop to b4 here, his whole point, again, as I've just mentioned, is to control the e4 square, immobilize a piece. The idea that here black would, for instance, go back to a5 and then when kicked some more, go back to b6. It wouldn't be logical. If the whole point of your opening is to control the e4 square, and by the way, and get pieces out quickly, you're going to take the knight here. You might even, let's back this up here, if I hadn't played a3 and had played bishop to d2, say, or castle or something, black very well might just take on c3 with his bishop. Now, if that were so, and for instance, if you knew that black was going to take bishop takes c3 on the next move, a3 is positively a blunder. You're giving away a whole move. And Jeff should have seen this, I think what he was saying, that I want black to take the knight on c3 so bad that I'm willing to sacrifice a whole move to get him to do it. It's a mistake. Taking the knight isn't a bad thing at all. And so Jeff has given away a move here. So a3, and of course Emory takes. And now knight e4. Is that right happened? Yeah, knight e4. And now pawn to c4. He doesn't lose a pawn on c3. But also he has a bunch of c pawns, and he's going to use them. It's all very logical to keep attacking the d5 point, and maybe something will come of it. Maybe he's hoping that the position will open up and that his two bishops will come alive. Spoiler alert, it doesn't really work that way. Emory played this move, an interesting move. Decentralizing it is. But now Jeff continues with his plan. Now black has a choice, take back with the pawn or get a piece out. Well, Emory was good at getting pieces out. And now Jeff, I'm not sure if Jeff saw this a move or so ago, 2 moves ago. I think he must have thought, I don't think he planned to lose a pawn here. I think what he had in mind is there's a common pattern, you may have seen it. In positions like this, oftentimes queen a4 check with a double attack ends up winning a piece on c4. Unfortunately, he missed the b5 move here, which Emory found, of course. And so black has just stolen a pawn. And there's a little more to explain here. White took here on c4, and now black can take with the queen. He took this way. Let's make the move. And Jeff took the queen here. So now is, I think, a good time to sum up. The queens are off. Is this a middle game, or is it an end game? Maybe reasonable folks can disagree. One definition of an end game is when it is very unlikely for kings to come under a direct attack and get mated. And I don't think that's what we have here. White's king get into trouble here. And in fact, you'll see about which more in due course, as we say. But the first thing to notice is this monster knight on e4. And then the two bishops. Yes, opposite colored bishops. But notice that one of them is a monster, and that's black's white squared bishop. And the other one is hobbled by the pawns that are stuck on black. And they won't be moving to white anytime soon either. So it's almost as if, as regards the bishops, black's up a whole piece. So let's see. That's enough of an advantage for Emory to come crashing through, as we all know. Okay, queen f4, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so Jeff played bishop to d2. And now Emory made, I wouldn't say this is a spectacular move, but I know most of us would have played rook to b8. Well, Emory played rook h6. He's not going to castle, of course. And he didn't. He even saved, this king to d7 move with the idea of moving the rook over this way from h8. No, he didn't waste any time on that. Rook c1, attacking a pawn. Emory wasn't interested. Got the piece out, and Jeff snapped it off. And now rook to b2. So he's attacking the d2 squared twice, defended twice, but of course that suggests bishop to g4, undermining the defender. And furthermore, just the 7th rank. Anyone who's read the 7th rank chapter on my system would know about this. Rook to b2. Jeff played bishop to b4. He may have been toying with the idea of rook to e7, which is a check and not anything more. But he also wanted to close the b line, I think. As soon as this rook gets in the game, there's going to be heck to pay. Anyway, Emory played a5. You don't get to stay there. Bishop back to d2. And now this is a move that I wouldn't have played also. I would have played, I think, rook to b8. And then maybe step aside and made room for my other rook on b2, doubling up. But Emory decided that white has only one developed piece, and it's pretty well developed. So why not get rid of it? He played rook to c8. I like it. If the white rook moves, then this black rook is immediately in the game. So he took it. Not much left to do that. But now the bishop has choices. He can go to a6. He can go back to g4. And this is a big problem. Again, look at the bishops. One of them doing nothing. Of course, this pawn is not hanging because rook to b1 wins the rook. Rook c8, bishop c1. Emory played rook to c2. King to d1, and now rook a2. And Jeff gave up the ghost here. He has, of course, there's knight to f2 winning a whole rook is the main threat. Bishop to g4 winning a whole knight is another threat. But how about this? We were talking about the definition of an endgame as opposed to a middle game. Can you imagine a bishop on a6 and a knight on c3 and a rook on e2? That's mate. And so this was a middle game. Nothing more to be done here. Jeff resigned. Was this a typical Tate game? Let's sum this up here. The material's even. It's an end game. And white is resigning, not down even a pawn. I say it is a typical Tate game. I played a bunch of games with Tate. I'm very glad I got to see him, put on his Tate shows. I will tell you that, yes, he wins games spectacularly, or he did. But mostly, yes, you would hear someone say, Tate just won a pawn against so-and-so. He's winning a opposite colored bishop ending against the other fellow. Most of his games, he didn't have to pull any rabbits out of any hats. He just outplayed people, and winning end games was a big part of that. And so anyway, and these are the games I'd like to go over, because these are the games that I say have more instructional value. Again, it's certainly for the first half, except for the H pawn moves at the beginning, which we might not have played. The bulk of black's moves were not hard to find. We could have played them, but maybe we wouldn't have. But we certainly wasn't. It's not within out of our range to find these moves. No great calculate. Yeah, what move required calculating 5 moves in advance? None of these moves did. I think this was a good game to see, and I'm going to bring some others that are like this. So check me out next time on Chess for Closers. We got more Tate games.